Holy Spirit, come and be present in our conversation tonight, knit our hearts together that we might chew on this conversation of what it means to be a place of welcome, a place of connection, a place of belonging, that we may understand how to have tools and techniques and awareness for the diversity that is your cosmopolitan canopy that you have created in this world that we inhabit. May you inhabit our conversation also. May we be strategic and critical in our thinking, but may we be harmonious in our discourse so that we may have that beautiful tension of conflict that leads us to a more productive tomorrow. We thank you for this opportunity for civil dialogue and discourse, and we offer it all up to you this evening. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. With that, I'm going to invite Sarah Greer to come forward and share a little bit about our evening.
Hello. I think I probably talked to all of y'all at the table almost. So I wanted to briefly say that I think I think everybody got stuff from the table, but if you want to, there are information about our upcoming events. I want to make sure that you know when those are. So Wednesday the 15th of May, we're having our normal third Wednesday group. We're calling it Sacred Conversations on Race. Anyone's welcome, so you're welcome to come. It's actually on this floor. You go to the main office and you go way to the back.
What time?
Just keep going.
What
7
time?
p.m.
7 p.m.
And that's every third Wednesday. If we change it up because of a holiday or something, we'll send out an email. If you're all on our email group, you know. We also have a couple of special events coming up starting on May 18th. May 18th, June 1st, and June 15th at 10 a.m. I think it's in the Wesley Room on the lower level, but please check the emails as they start coming out with the room information. But our own John Tozzi, some of you may know, is leading some sessions on, the first one's going to be on bias. The core team's already seen that. It's a great session. So 10 to about noon, 3 Saturdays, and we will have food. So
June what? What are the other 2 dates?
it's June 1st and June 15th,
Got
10
it.
a.m. And then, of course, our next sacred conversation will be Wednesday, June 19th. So I wanted to share that with you. I'm going to say a little bit about Mauricio. I don't want to make it too long, but he's been doing diversity training. I won't even read it.
Yeah.
He's been doing diversity training for many years. He's been a member of Floris for many years.
Yeah.
I can tell you from a personal standpoint, he does an incredible job in what he does, and that's because he has a real passion for it, and you will see that. So I don't want to hold you up from seeing it, so I'm going to turn it over to Mauricio.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to say this too, that I was raised a Catholic. My mom was raised by nuns in a convent, and I was raised very Catholic. And when Kelly, you can see Kelly there, my bride, was pregnant with Ethan there. He's 19. Elise is 16. Maya, the youngest, is 13. She said, "How do we raise this child?" Because she's a Methodist and I'm a Catholic. And I said, let's go to any church and every church in a 5-mile radius, and may the best speaker win. And so we went to every church of worship, every house. You know Sunday is the most separate day of the week, so you can't go to one church and get it. You got to keep going to different churches. And I came back and I said, you know what? Your guy rocks and mine are snoozers. So I switched teams. And that is what I call an inclusive journey. You're open to other faiths. You know, we were going to, when we were dating in Baltimore, we would go to United Universalist Church. One Sunday, we'd go to Catholic Church. Another Sunday, we'd go to the Methodist Church, which is the oldest Methodist church in the whole country in Baltimore. And we were rotating. And I'd been to AME. I lived with Mormons for a summer. So that's my family. And this session tonight is much bigger than race. I want to be very clear. That's the trappings of language. Diversity, inclusion. You can't just talk about race. You can't just talk about culture or ethnicity or language or accent. You got to talk about all of it. So I'm going to give us a framework to get us all on the same page. I'm also going to show you a technique right now to how to introduce yourself. And I use this in schools. I work with law enforcement, military, Native American tribes. I've worked with Dominion Power is my client. The Airport Authority is my client. You name it, I've done it. I've done this workshop in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for the Navy. So you name it, I've done it. I don't want to talk more about me, but I will say this. Versus having a slide with my bio up there, I'm going to show you a better technique. I don't know if I can slide that. So you put your name in the middle, then you pick things on the outside that are important to you. When I work with kids in school, elementary, junior high, and high school, and we get time to really roll up our sleeves, it's called a diversity diagram or a mind map or a cultural web. You put your name in the middle, then you pick things on the outside that are important to you. All right, 3 things must be pictures, not words, 5 items minimum. So I put up here that I'm the son of immigrants. I used to be Hispanic, now I'm Latino. I don't know what I'll be tomorrow. We keep changing the conversation. I lived on a houseboat for 5 years where I met my wife. I love to cycle. I love to photograph. I was a lay leader in this church for 8 years. When you're only supposed to do it for 4, they said, hey, do you mind staying on another 4? And by the way, when Tom approached me, he says, I want you to be a lay leader in this church. I'm like, Tom, I'm relatively new, and I was raised a Catholic. He says, that's exactly what I want you to be on our team. So he values diversity. Most of us fear diversity. Most of us go, ooh, yuck. He embraced it. And this was, well, if Ethan's 19, this is 20 years ago. So when we talk about introducing yourself, I could have given you a bio. I prefer this. So I'm a scuba diver. My son and I are certified. My son was an Eagle Scout, is an Eagle Scout, and we went to what they call sea-based to scuba dive. I'm a kayaker. The roles I play in life: husband, brother, son, uncle, friend, trainer, consultant, coach, expert witness. The firstborn, when my father dies, my mom says, you must write the obituary. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're the oldest. Who knows what I'm talking about? You're the oldest, right? And my father on his deathbed, he said to me, she's all yours. I'm like, what are you talking about? I get it. My mom now married to me. I'm now, have you ever heard the sandwich generation? If you're born after 1964, you will spend more time taking care of your parents than they did taking care of you. That's a diversity issue. So, and you got to include a risk or surprise, fear or phobia. Why? If every person shares a risk or surprise, fear or phobia when they do this exercise and they put it up in their office, what does it do? What does it create? When everyone shares a risk or surprise, fear, something I don't know by looking at you, what does it create? Safety. So I'm a sleepwalker, and I have a fear of money because my first is going to college, and I have 2 right behind him. I'll have 3 kids in college at one time. All right? That's kind of scary. Right? Ethan's going to JMU in the fall. Elisa's going to commit to Shenandoah on scholarship. I said to her, thank you for getting a scholarship. I might be able to pull this off if one of you helps me, right? And who knows what happens with mine. So what do you prefer? I gave you a bio of bullets or a mind map, a cultural web, right? So I wanted to show you that technique. So let's get right to it. If I ask you what you know about diversity, inclusion, if I interviewed each of you and said, hey, what does diversity mean to you? And you're about to do that. You would say to me a definition based on where you grew up, who you grew up with. All right? Most of us grew up in homogeneous stovepipes. Some of us grew up like military or State Department and have traveled all over the world. I've been to 70 countries. I've done this work in 70 countries. I lived in Paraguay. I lived in Costa Rica. I told you my parents are immigrants. Lived with Mormons for a summer. I mean, I've had some experiences, right? If I ask you what you know about diversity, you can tell me what you know. If I ask you what you don't know, you might say there's a lot I don't know. But if I ask you what you don't know about this conversation, what can you tell me? Nothing. Right? Now, how many of you have had this experience? Total stranger walks up to my wife and says, excuse me, are you the nanny? These children, they're gorgeous, but what are they? I like that one. What are they? And you're the nanny? How does that happen? It's based on what they don't know, right? Now, we could get upset, or we could try to educate. Now, if it's my wife's 13th question at a party, it gets a little old, right? We all mean well. My question is about how we treat people. And in talking to Tom about this, he says, Floris probably was unintentional, benign neglect when we talk about diversity and inclusion. Now we're going to become more intentional. It's on our radar. We're talking about these issues. And I'm going to give you one ugly example, but I have to use examples. I'm a storyteller. So I travel every week. I've flown 1.5 million miles. That's why I live right here next to Dulles Airport, because I'm always on an airplane flying somewhere. And it's work. It's a real journey for me to get to my Bible study group. And I got there early. I was excited talking to people. I'm never there early. And they started bashing Democrats, and they started bashing Catholics. And I was watching the body language, and everybody seemed very comfortable doing that. And I kind of raised my hand, and I said, excuse me, I resemble these remarks. And I said, and I quote, I thought this was a Bible study, not a hate group, right? And then I went nuclear. I said, if we are all Christians, that means we're all Christ-like. And if Jesus Christ were sitting right here, I doubt he would be bashing anybody. Oh, they did not like me at that point. And I left, and I called Tom. I said, hey, I just want you to know what happened. And he made it a part of the sermon the following week. All right, but it's easier to hate than to understand. There's no doubt about that. And these issues take time. I'm going to move fast and furious in an hour and change with you, but let's go right at it, right? How many of you have had this moment? Oh, I didn't know you were married to one. I never meant to offend you. Are either of those apologies? No. Covey says you're trying to talk yourself out of what you behaved your way into. All right, I like that quote. You're trying to talk yourself, instead of saying, I am an idiot. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Instead of owning it, no. You're being overly sensitive. I call that blaming the victim. I do a lot of diversity work. I do sexual harassment work because people go, that was very thought-provoking. If my mentor did the same workshop, she'd be labeled a radical feminist, right? But I do the same class, wow, that was really thought-provoking. The bias of the audience about a topic on gender bias, right? I get race work because I'm not black or white. And then I get the Latino work because I speak Spanish, right? So you can't make this up, all right? So let's go right at it. My mission is to provoke, to facilitate, to surprise, entertain, to add value, to be some kind of subject matter expert. But you're experts too, so I'm going to facilitate this conversation. I don't like talking this much. So I want to keep our mission in mind, making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. It doesn't say making disciples of people that look just like me, right? But making disciples of all of us. And by the way, most of us are very comfortable with people like ourselves. Why do we not embrace? Why do we not approach? That's what this course is about, people that are different. All right? And then I worked for the National PTA, and I would be sent to PTA meetings, and it was always fascinating to watch the PTA meetings. The parents that looked like the board, hey, how are you? Come on, you should be secretary next year. But the parents that were different, invisible. Nobody embraced them. Nobody said hello. Nobody walked them around. So we're going to talk about all that, all right? Well, we need a framework. So let's get to it. Grab your Post-it. I gave each of you one. And when I say diversity, what pops in your head? What are all the differences? Because it's much more complicated than race. Oh, if it was only about race, I would not have a job. So what do you need? A Post-it. Bob, I didn't give you one. All right. All right, who needs one? I gave him out. Yeah, pass them out if you don't have one. So when I say diversity, write down everything that pops in your head. No wrong answers. That's a beautiful thing about my work. I'm going to tighten this up in here. What are all the differences in the communities that we want to serve versus the communities we actually serve? What are all the differences in the schools where your kids go to school? What are all the differences? This might be too close, actually. I'm going to put it here. Oh, did I just buy that? Okay. All right. Now, turn to the person you're sitting with. You always sit with somebody you know. Share with each other your list, but you might, I forgot to write that down. So it's called a pair share. Turn and share with each other briefly what you write down. You might go, I forgot to, you're right about that. What are all the differences that we want to come to this church? What are all the differences that may not be present in this church right now? What? Diversity, differences. What pops in your head? Laundry list. All right. No wrong answers. Because I know somebody came to this session going, I hope it's bigger than race. I hope it's bigger than. All right. So who wants to start? Hit me. Raise your hand. I say diversity. I'm not a teller. I'm an asker. Right? When I say diversity, what pops in your head? Give me them. What are the differences? What are the biases? Biases based on difference. Race, of course, good. That's a good start. What else? Gender. Religion. And I make a distinction between religion, faith, and spirituality. Going through the motions is religion. Truly believing, right? Not having to go to church, but having your relationship with God might make you more spiritual, right? My dad could not stand organized religion. My dad thought the Catholic Church was corrupt from the day I remember. And if he was alive today, what would he say to my mom? I told you so, right? He had a bias about the Catholic Church. Race, gender, religion, faith, spirituality. What are we missing? Culture, income. This is Northern Virginia. Income, class. Oh, you live in X neighborhood? Wow. Class, socioeconomic, class, money, status. What else? Age. Your education. Politics, and I will tie the politics into values, beliefs, a view of the world. This has been My saving grace, the last 2 years, I've never been this busy. Washington, D.C. is phenomenal for my work. I mean, every day I go, you can't make this up. Right? I didn't see it coming. I really said to Kelly, you know, business is great. Man, business is over the top. Hate is a growth industry right now. It is. It's a growth industry. We used to say, oh, hate's going up as fast as the price of oil. Then oil kind of turned, hate kept going, right? It kept going, right? Look, you can't make this up. Guy walks into 2 mosques, mounts a camera on his forehead so he can stream the carnage to all his haters. That's New Zealand, okay? Then other people in Sri Lanka go, okay, they attack Muslims, we're going to attack back. And they go after Catholics on Easter Sunday. You can't make this up. And then you've got the guy in Pittsburgh in the synagogue, killed all those people because they were Jews. And then you've got the kid in California, went into a synagogue. I mean, look, understand this. 20% of all hate crimes are directed at 3% of the population. Jews are 3% of the population, yet 20% of all hate crimes are directed towards them, right? You can't make this up. What are we missing? Race, gender, religion, faith, spirituality, culture. I'll add to culture ethnicity, background, upbringing. I'll add nationality, national origin, where you live, where you grew up, where you live, hood, zip code, ability, able, disable, sexual orientation, sexual identity, sexual preference. Man, has this exploded in the last 2 years? Right? What else? Sorry? Size, height, weight, appearance. What was this over here? Yes, marital status, parental status, family status. For my parents. Immigration. My parents, when I grew up, I was told they were foreigners. You are foreign to me. Right? Now we call them aliens. Now they're not from this planet. And we add the word illegal in front of them. The language can't get more negative than that. Is there something more nasty than aliens? Yes, let's put the word illegal in front of it. Right? I remember walking, and I grew up in Arlington, and then we moved to McLean. My dad was State Department, and I remember walking down the street. I'm 52 years old, so this is 40 years ago. 45 years ago, and I'm walking with my father. My father's very dark, kind of shorter, bigger build than me, and this pickup truck pulls up, and all these guys are yelling at my dad, go back to your country, go back to where you came from. And my dad would turn, and he'd always say the same thing, hey man, I served this country, Air Force, Korea. Did you serve? And the kid on the back of the pickup truck always said the same thing, oh, you're a vet? You can stay. And then he'd bang the cab of the pickup, and they'd drive off. Now, I call that a diversity pissing match, pardon my expression. I see your anti-immigration bias, and I raise you the wild card. Veteran status, military. This is the trump card. Now, my dad would always ask the same question. Hey, are you a vet? How many times was the racist on the back of the pickup truck a vet? Never. Never. Because if you actually were a vet, you served in a slice of the world that's more diverse. The military more diverse than the general population. And you've moved and you've traveled. Ask a child, I don't like the phrase military brats. Ask the child of military parents, where you from? Kind of from anywhere and everywhere, but not from anywhere in particular, right? They grasp diversity. I mean, they get it, okay? They get it. And in the military, it's officer versus enlisted. There's your bias, right? And what are you doing? You can't play with that boy. Your mom, your dad is enlisted. That's the son or daughter of an officer. The bias is even handed down to the children. Right, I've done this work all over. What are we missing? Race, gender, religion, faith, culture. Yes, affiliations. Now we might think that's funny, but I'm a Wahoo grad. I went to UVA. My wife went to Virginia Tech. That was their biggest hang-up about me. Was one, he's Latino, but two, he went to Virginia. I was like, what? Right? And I had to tell the patriarch of the family, you know, you're not in the ACC unless the president of UVA asks the commissioner of the to let you in. So you're not here unless we let you in to beat us up in football every year. Right? What are we missing? Go. Please. Sure, tats, body art, Piercings. And the appearance, clothing, fashion, style, food, traditions, customs. You get it, right? Anybody want to add something else? Smells. You mean like food smell or body smell?
Like I remember going into a house. We were looking when I was a kid, and we were going into a house to look at the vine, and it smelled like Indian spices.
Ah, yes, so food.
My family was like, "Oh, we can live here." Like the smells were different.
And you're like, no, I like this smell. You know, one of my first dates with my wife, I took her to, anybody who's here is Ethiopian? Raise your hand. Ethiopian. So you walk in there, you sit down, and there's this big, ginormous table, and then they bring the food, like one ginormous plate, and it's on a spongy bread, and the foods are in piles, and you're not quite sure what it is. And Cully looks at me, she goes, this is awesome. She just dives in, carrying the, and I remember a previous person I went with, excuse me, I need silverware. I was like, oh, man, this isn't going to work. It was a test, but I love somebody who embraces difference and change versus somebody, ooh. See, most of us, when we come across a difference, we go, ooh, or yuck, or less than, not as good as. Is it not working? Oh, it's flipped up over my ear. Thank you. You're a spokesman. Oh, this is my Janet Jackson headset. Okay, all right. So that's the problem. Many of us, so my wife's a speech pathologist, and she works with special needs kids, autism, Down syndrome, speech impediments, you name it. And we raise our children, and when we walked into a place and there was a child with special needs, Kelly always said the same thing, go say hi, go play with them. How many parents, oh God, we gotta go. This might be contagious. How many parents? Passing off the ew, the yuck to the child. Don't look, come on, let's go, come on. How many parents? The vast majority, right? And my wife say, go find out what their name is, say hi, and go play. Because what does a child visibly disabled, because there's invisibly disabled people too, like Crohn's disease, right? But what's a child that's, let's say, in a wheelchair, what does that child want more than anything else? Connection, to be welcome, to play, to feel included, right? Which leads me to another point right now. As we do this work, understand that in any organization, including church, there's two groups of people. All right, this popped into my head. I want you to have it like it's like a pair of lenses. I'm going to have you click. There's the in group in any organization. We also call them the dominant group, in control, in power, often very homogenous. And then there is everybody else, and then we're in separate, what we call out groups, okay? So, again, let's turn to my son. I use my family as my canvas. So my son is in a Catholic school, and I get a call that he's gotten in trouble. So I go to the principal, and I said, what's going on? Well, your son did this with this other boy. I said, okay, what's the penalty? Well, he'll probably be suspended for 2 days. I said, okay, how about the other boy? Well, the other boy is the mayor's son. He will walk, right? In group. Oh, and by the way, the argument was, well, we need to make an example of your son. We have to send a message to the Latin, Hispanic kids, right? In group, out group. 1.2 million, and we can put your kid at any college in the country. The rest of us, what are we talking about? How much? I didn't even know that existed. In group, out group. I'll come back to that concept. So, how does your mind make sense out of all these differences? Well, the first thing we do, many of us, not all of us, is, ooh, less than, inferior, and they're not as good as. Some of us were raised, you are the best and you are better than them. I was raised, always think of people less than you. Don't worry about the people better off than you. You're well off, and think about the people less than you. That's the way I was raised. I wasn't raised to envy those that have more. I was raised to always represent those that have less. All right? That's an orientation, though. That's a parenting approach, right? All right, so does anybody see a pattern? How does your mind make sense out of all? And you could add more. But this is a mosaic. This is a very diverse tapestry. How does your mind make sense at all of these differences? And it's not the difference, it's the meaning we attach to the difference. Because if I said priest, one thing would pop. If I said Catholic priest, right? Lawyers, police officers, right? It's not the difference that pops in your head that I'm worried about. It's the meaning we attach to the difference. Right? Oh, those Catholics, those Democrats, those Republicans. Right? If I'm sitting anywhere, I always say the same thing. All of them? You've met all of them. That's an automatic way to unravel the stereotype. You've met every you've met every Democrat. You've met every Methodist. Wow, you've been busy, right? So the question is, how does your mind make sense out of these differences? And what has technology done to bias and prejudice? What has technology, social media, what has it done to this whole conversation? Brainwash, overload. The Pope says on an airplane, who am I to judge homosexuals? Boom, 9 seconds later, it's global, right?
But it's also allowed people who think the same to find their group and to self-validate.
Yes. And it's also allowed people to express their hate because I'm hiding behind anonymity. I'm Bar 47. I don't know who you are, and boom, I can just say god-awful stuff, right? I don't know if you've been looking lately, but it is some nasty. And how many of you were raised, I don't care what culture you're from, how many of you were raised, if you got nothing positive to say, don't say it? Raise your hand if you heard that. Go to Facebook, and you're like, what happened? Where are all the mothers? It is, and I said to my one friend, I said, are you okay? And he said, F you. I said, are you okay? F you. And I said, Ron. He's president and CEO of a construction company. I said, Ron, your customers are on here. Are you okay? And he texted me personally, I'm sorry, I was having a bad day. You might not want to put that out. You might want to keep that one to yourself. Right? Yeah. So the question is, how does your mind make sense? Does anybody see a pattern? I'm going to explain all hate on the planet, not just U.S. domestic, but my work is global. Does anybody see how your mind simplifies, takes shortcuts? Because it can't handle all this at once. Categories, labels, we chunk. Good, what else? Differences. We don't focus on what we have in common. We focus on what we have. I don't know if you've seen this commercial. I don't know what they're selling, but the woman's got a tattoo, and the other woman who's there out in a picnic is like, you must not work, right? You must not have a job. And the guys are talking, is, where's your lawnmower? Oh, I have a kid, pay for the cut. And he's like, they're all looking at him like, what? It's just so right on with bias and prejudice. Oh, you don't work. You have a tattoo. It's like, what does that mean, right? So, does anybody see a pattern? What is it? Other. Good. Me versus me, other, them, those people. Good. Anything else? All right, so let's do this. My gosh, too many gizmos. All right. 2 models to explain all bias, all prejudice on the planet. We'll start with this model first. So the inside sliced like a pizza in red, we call that the primary dimension diversity. Age, race, gender, ethnicity. I know I have a clicker in here that I can use. Everything else on the outside, we call that the secondary dimension diversity. So my question to you in a second is, why do we call the inside the primary? Why do we call the outside the secondary? Now, this is a pair of lenses that we all wear. The problem is you don't know they sit on the tip of your nose until you come to a workshop. You see, there are biases that you know you have, but there are biases that you don't know you have. We call that unconscious bias. I'll give you an example. You're driving down the highway, and you see a police officer, and you automatically brake. And then you look down at your speedometer, and you're going like 9 miles an hour. You look like a nut. You're like, oh, hi. You're so embarrassed. Why do we react in that fashion? Because we don't see a person. Oh, that's this one. Sorry. We see a member of a group. You see, we don't see each other as human beings often. We see each other as members of different groups, and or we judge based on affiliation. What's the first question you ask a total stranger at a barbecue? What do you do? Where are you from? We don't even ask each other our names anymore. Right? Where are you from? What do you do? Right? So we're walking out one night from a block party, and Kelly goes, who'd you meet tonight? Well, I met a plumber, I met an electrician, a police officer. What are their names? Oh, God, I don't know their names. Right? Why do we remember these things and not other things? Right? So this is the retrieval system. This is the file cabinet in your brain. This is a pair of lenses. I'll give you a quick example. So I'm at the fence watching my daughter. I don't like this thing. I'm at the fence watching my daughter play field hockey. And this other dad, because my daughter, Elise, right here, she is a star of the Herndon High School field hockey team. She's going to play on scholarship, all right? And this dad comes up to me at the fence, and he looks at me and goes, hey, are you Elise's dad? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you know she's going to they call it the snowball, the winter dance. I said, oh yeah, you know she's going with a black kid. Not that I'm a racist or anything. And I looked at him, I said, that's actually the definition of a racist, all right? All right? Now, where am I? Where am I? I got to switch hands. Where am I? All right? I'm talking about Quentin, her friend, and he's saying, what, she's black, right? You know that. You know that. You know she's taking a black kid. I'm like, yes, his name is Quentin. He's a nice kid. Now, he thought he was doing me a favor, just making sure I knew who she's going to dance with. All right? That's an easy example of my work. I see human beings. And it's not that we see race, that's not bad. It's the meaning we attach to race. All right? So, this is the file cabinet. This is the retrieval system. Let me give you some easier examples. Sunnis, Shias, Kurds. Do they see each other as human beings, or is it a fight to the death? English, Irish, Catholic, Protestant. Israel, Palestine. Russia, Ukraine, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal. Is anybody talking about what's best for this country or what's best for their party? In any African country, they're all the same race? No. What tribe you're a member of? I just explained all hate on the planet. Right? And that guy that walks into to any of the synagogues, any of the mosques, were they shooting at human beings or are they trying to kill blanks? You know the answer. And imagine this. I'm going to go and kill 51 people that I've never met before. Only thing I know is they're all Muslims, right? Only thing I know is they're Jews. Think about that. The staggering implication of what we call blind hate, right? 9/11, were they trying to kill human beings on 9/11 or were they trying to kill Americans? You know the answer. And think about this. 3,000 people killed in the towers, Pentagon, and the airplane that crashed in Pennsylvania. A third of them were Muslims. No. They weren't Muslims. They were American Muslims. They're not worthy. They're lower than us. We don't see human beings. What happens when we don't see human beings? All heck breaks loose. When we don't see a human being, so a police officer in New York City walks up to me, we're talking, he says, this perpetrator, walked up to one of our officers and shot her in the temple, mother of 3, and killed her. We can't find a connection between the perp and the officer. I said, there's no connection. He wasn't shooting a human being. He was shooting at her uniform. She was parked in a police car. And they were like, what? What happens when we hate the uniform and we don't see the person wearing it? That's what happens. In Houston, there was a sniper. He was shooting at all those police officers. He didn't know them. He knew they were officers. That's what's happening in this country right now. Now, you tell me, why is this called the primary? Why do we take a subset of these differences, stick it in the middle and call it the primary? Why do we put all the other differences in the outer blue ring and call it the secondary? The primary, you can't choose a center. We can see the primary, we can't see the secondary. Primary is called a first impression, job interview. My mother, don't grow your goatee. I'm like, Mom, you look like a terrorist. I'm like, Mom! All right, I'm at a bar. I have to use simple examples. When I travel, I don't stay in my room. I like to go down to the room. I don't like to eat at a table by myself either. So I was always at the bar. I'm always got a paper open, working on a laptop, watching the ball game, whatever, talking to people. I'm very social. You don't sit next to me on an airplane and not talk. Some of my best friends are people I met on airplanes, right? So this guy is drinking gin and tonics through a straw. He's just finished his 8th gin and tonic. And he looks at me and he goes, what are you, man? And he's looking at me like I'm a refrigerator. Some of you are familiar with this view. And I look at him. This happens to me a lot. I'm what I call an in-betweener. People look at me and they go, well, he's something. Right? I'm not quite sure what he is, but he's not one of us. One guy said, you're from Kashmir. I said, really? Another guy said, you could be from Lebanon, Beirut. What did he say? The Berlin of the Middle East. I said, you think I'm from Lebanon? Kashmir? My own wife thought I was Italian when she met me. I'm living on a houseboat in the Inner Harbor in Baltimore, 36-foot floating Winnebago, $1 billion view of the Inner Harbor. And my wife comes down. Now, at the time of just a friend, and I was throwing a party because my yacht club, there's fireworks right on top of my yacht club, 4th of July. And she climbs onto my boat, and Kelly goes, Mauricio, this isn't a yacht. I said, oh, no, it's a yacht club. This is a houseboat. Sleeps 8, floating Winnebago. Are you Italian? Now, she thought I was an Italian, right? She thought I was an Italian living on a yacht When she found out my family was Colombia, South America, living on a houseboat, did I go up in status or did I crash and burn? What changed? Her perception of me. By the way, can I do anything about that? That's all it's all in her own head, right? Do we see human beings, or do we see a difference and focus and add value and add meaning, and we're off to the races, right? And we all do this on a conscious level and on an unconscious level, and I'll show you that before we walk out. So, what else can you say? What else can you say about the primary versus the secondary? So far, you've said what we see or what we think we see. Visual, first impression, job interview, security at the airport, people watching at the mall, the boardwalk in Ocean City. How do you find out these things about me? You have to ask. And I don't mean ask people that look like you about things about you, but if you're really good at this, you're going to ask people that are different about things that are different. Oh, I'm going to be uncomfortable with that. You got to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. All right? Let me show you a church I'm going to return to. Let me show you a church I'm not going to go back to. I'm doing work for another church not far from here a couple years ago, and the director of membership says, Mauricio, I can pick out a prospective parishioner in our church the minute they pull up and park as they're coming up the sidewalk. And their pastor goes, what did you just say? I can pick them out outside through the windows. And he says to me, I think I just figured out what's our biggest problem. All right? The bias, the prejudice of the person in charge of membership. And she says to me, is that bias? She didn't even know. But I'm looking for a type. If they don't look, if that's not subjective. So let's go back to the guy. So he says, what are you? Are you Mexican? Are you Italian? Are you Indian? Are you from the Middle East? Now, he doesn't see me as a person. He sees me as a member of a group. So he says, so what are you? He said, are you Mexican? Are you Italian? Are you Indian? Are you from the Middle East? I said, who do you get along with best? And you know what he said to me? Because he was drunk. He goes, I don't like any of those people. I'm like, we're in Manhattan. I didn't tell you where we were. We were in Times Square. We were in New York City. I said, we're in New York City in Times Square. And you don't like Indians, Mexicans, Italians, or people from the Middle East? He says, why do you think I'm drinking so much? I'm not kidding. I said, so what do you do? He goes, well, I work for FEMA, and I go door to door. After there's been a disaster, I fill out the paperwork. I said, so how's that going? If he's walking, oh, somebody, hey! He says, I love doing my work in Alabama. Right? I love doing my work, but I'm really out of my element here. Is he the right guy to do the job? Does he even know why he feels the way he feels? Right? Or is he just stressed out? Again, there's conscious and there's unconscious. I'll give you another example. A woman says to me in a class, I'm the travel agent for this organization, and then we have a DC office and an LA office. And she says, I'm on the phone with this guy, and he goes, hey, I've never met you. You book all my travel between DC and LA. He's based in LA. I'd love to finally meet you and put a face to the voice. I talk to you more than my own wife. She says, where are you? I'm in the lobby. I have an hour between meetings. That's very rare. I'm usually overbooked. I'll be right down. So she comes down, and he's like, where are you? She's like, I'm standing right next to you. And he turns and looks at her and goes, oh, you're black. Now, I don't know how you're supposed to respond to that, but he says, oh, you're black? I didn't know you were black. You don't sound black. Now, it's like a genie comes out of a bottle, and then he looks at her and goes, oh, I'm so sorry I said that. I don't know why I said that. And she goes, oh, you got to go to Mauricio's workshop on unconscious bias. Right? He's like, I don't even know why I said that. But put yourself in her shoes. Again, oh, I thought you were white like me. You're black. Right? How do you respond to that? Is that a compliment, by the way? You know what she said? That's me. You've been talking to me forever. Surprise, surprise, right? She was great. But some of us aren't so open to these kinds of moments. Some of us are more sensitive. Some of us are insulted. Some of us are like, wow, I thought I was doing a great job. And this is how you talk to me? Was he talking to a person, or was he starting to talk to the group? On the phone is a person, but in person, you're black? I didn't know you were black. He's not talking to the person. He's talking to the group, right? What else do you see here? What's true of the primary? What's true of the secondary? Compare and contrast. Excellent. Primary, for the most part, hand were dealt. What you cannot change, birth, life, nature, nurture. You can change a secondary. For the most part, you can't change a primary. How are we going to raise Ethan? We'll go to every church in a 5-mile radius. Let's move. Let's have another kid. Do you think they should go to college? I mean, all of these are choices. The primary, for the most part, is no choice. What else do you see there? Well, let's add the law. Which of these differences are protected by federal law? Except for sexual orientation. Everything else is protected by federal law. Now, the Supreme Court's going to rule this fall on sexual orientation. Now, remember the Constitution. Equal protection under the law. It doesn't say equal protection under the law for everybody who looks like me and throw that person in jail if they're different, right? Now, in 28 states, if today, it used to be 32, it's getting better. Still not where we need to be. In 28 states, if yesterday I thought you were straight and today I find out you're gay, I can fire you on the spot in 28 states and it's completely legal. Did you know that? Now, my question to you, and this is Tom. We love, we're all God's children, right? Now, except for blanks. That's not Tom's approach, right? That's not God's approach, in my opinion. I don't think that's Jesus Christ's approach either. We're all in this together, right? So, in 28 states, yesterday I thought you were gay. Yesterday I thought you were straight. Today I find out you're gay. I can fire you. My question to you is this. Did your qualifications and credentials change overnight? No, what changed was my bias, my prejudice, my perspective of that person. So that's the last frontier. Also protected by federal law, veteran status, and religious persecution. By the way, a historical footnote. The 1964 Civil Rights Act, which protects gender, race, ethnicity, age. The 1990 was the ADA. 64 Civil Rights Act. Strom Thurmond and Jesse Helms saw the 64 Civil Rights Act coming together, and they said, we're going to add a poison pill to this law so it wouldn't pass. What was the poison pill? Gender. So the two most towering racist, sexists in Congress, like, let's get together. You and your constituents, me and my Southern Democrats, will add gender to the law. There are no women here. It won't pass. It passed despite anyways, and it blew up in their face. The haters are like, oh my God, we're going to protect women now as well? This is outrageous. 64 Civil Rights Act. Every woman in this room, you were an afterthought. You weren't expected to be protected. It was expected that gender being added to the law would be a poison pill and kill the law. It passed anyways. So this is the primary dimension. This is the secondary dimension. How do we get from people who come to this church? Because I think we're very good at greeting. But how do we get from greeting somebody to really welcoming somebody? How do we get from somebody who comes here feeling like, feeling like they're maybe not welcome because of their group, of making them feel welcome because we connect with them as a person? And I think the answer is small groups. Go to their house, break bread, connect, small groups. But not everybody has the time or the gumption or the interest to go to a small group. And then if you get there, they're bashing a particular group. That's not good, especially if you resemble that group. Right? You don't like blanks or blanks or blanks? That represents me. So the question for you is, how do we get from the group to the person? How do we get from the primary to the secondary?
So Jesus would make it very easy.
How would Jesus make it? What would he say? If he were in the room, what would he say? And that's tough. He is in the room, but if he had a microphone, right?
Jesus says is that we're supposed to see the person on the inside and on the outside. It makes this whole conversation very simple.
Exactly. See the person on the inside. All right?
In order to do that, we have to find out really what keeps them up at night. What's their issues? What kind of...
We have to ask.
You have to have an engaging conversation.
We have to inquire. We have to care.
But that's what God wants us to do.
All right?
The rest of the stuff, I'm looking at it, and our friends...
It shouldn't distract us.
If we're focused on two things, one, we should not look at someone's appearance outside. Look at something on the inside. Langston Hughes had a great...
Don't look at appearance.
Langston Hughes had a thing about apples. There's a poem. It's beautiful. And it was an orchard, and they're picking apples, and all the pickers wanted to pick the most beautiful apples on the tree. I'll make this short, because it's so long.
Yeah.
And they get done with all the apples, and they've still got 2 bushels to fill. And now all the ugly apples, the head of the orchard says, pick that one over there. Took a bite out of that apple. It was the best tasting apple he had in the whole orchard. And the moral of the story is,
Can't judge a book by its cover. Right?
and that's what God wants us to look at. All these things
And
all outside.
in my field, we would say suspend judgment. Nothing wrong with looking and appreciating, but don't hold it against me if you don't like what you see. I can give you the story of stories. What happens when I bring home Kelly Elizabeth, my bride, to meet my immigrant parents? All right, this is the story of stories. Are they going to see Kelly as a person or as a member of a group? And it's not the group, it's the meaning they attach to the group. All right, I'll make this short too, because I want to hear from you. What's the first question my mother asks when Kelly leaves the living room the first night? With a rosary in the left hand, in Spanish. She's powdering her nose. What's the first question my mother asks? Yeah, is she one of us? Católica. Right? Does she see the person or the member of her group? I looked at my mother. Does that have to be the first? Católica? So, okay, she's not Catholic. She's Methodist. My mother looks at my father, gives him the chin. My dad looks at me and he says, and I quote, I have no idea what that means. And my mother says, and I quote, ha! Which means I don't like her. My dad sees the opening because my mom freezes. All right, I got it. Gosh, I've got too many gizmos here. My dad says, okay, she's a speech pathologist. What kind of money will she make? Will she work after the children are born? Will she bear fruit? I looked at my dad. Did you just say fruit? My mother, where is this Lynchburg, Virginia? She brings it back. Isn't that where Jerry Falwell, God rest his soul? My father, she came from how many kids? How many kids does she want? My mother, does she keep a clean house? My father, does she like to cook? My mother, and they could tell, is really getting agitated. Because they're not, what's the question they never asked? Because they were choking on their own bias and prejudice. What's the one question they never asked? Do you love her? Does she love you? Do you make each other happy? It never came up because in Spanish, in a whisper, she's so different. Are you sure this is going to work? Now, how many kids, think about this right now, how many kids know their parents are bigots? And they look at their partner and they go, this is not going to work, so let's go elope. And when we meet for the first time, oh, I know, not what you expected. We got married last week. What? To spite you. Mixed marriage, by the way, is the fastest growing segment of marriages are mixed marriages. And Ann, my co-partner on our team, her husband's white, and she will tell you, they will go to dinner and the server will bring 2 checks. Can you imagine? Right? And they're affectionate and they're holding hands and you can't possibly be with each other. Right? And her stories about kids, oh my gosh, I thought I had some stories. Is that yours? My favorite is my friend who's got an adopted child. They ask him regularly, how much? And where'd you get him? Like he's a toy poodle he picked up in a pet store. And the boy hears people asking his father, where'd you get him? How much? Right? Right? You're single, right? How'd you get an adopted kid from? It is amazing to me what the mind does, right? Now, I want you on your Post-it to answer this question. How does Floris become more welcoming, more inclusive? Because what's inclusion? Inclusion is that everyone is welcome. Everyone can be here. Everyone can come. Everyone feels comfortable. So how does Floris welcome everybody? And by the way, my favorite moment introducing my wife, my girlfriend now, my wife, to my parents was when my mother looked at Kelly and turned to my father and said in Spanish, a mí no me gusta, I don't like her. And my father said, yo tampoco, which is I don't like her either. Kelly's sitting right here. She speaks Spanish. I had a Homer Simpson kind of, no! You know, my mom calls me a week later, why doesn't Kelly like me? Mom, you told her to her face. Oh, don't bring that up. Any of you have this family member who's a racist with selective memory? Did I say that? I thought that, but did I say that out loud? But Mom, I got 9 witnesses. Actions have consequences. But when you say, I didn't mean it, they think that they're backing out. You can't bring the train back to the station. Oh, I didn't mean, please tell Kelly to stop being so sensitive. I'm like, Mom, you can't tell Kelly how to feel. That's our problem. We don't want to own the consequences of our actions. No one wants to apologize anymore. Civility is gone, right? It's just so much easier to hate than to understand. So how do we understand? How do we become more welcoming, more inclusive? How do we see the person and not the group? You know, is there a type? That's a question I have for you. Is there a type at Floris? Is there a type? I would tell you there is for many years, a type. Because the rest of us are going, where is everybody? Right? But that's not the modus operandi now. Now we want this to be open and welcoming, and there should be no type. Right? You know, I'll say this last thing. My wife works in the high school, speech pathologist, in the high school where two of our kids go. And nobody knows that Kelly is the mother of a high school and junior until they see me with Kelly and they go, "Oh, you're Ethan's mom." Yeah, Kelly Velasquez. "Oh, you're by the way, I'm not Ethan's dad. No, I'm not Mauricio Velasquez. I'm Ethan's dad. And because Elise is a field hockey star, I'm not Mauricio or Kelly Velasquez. We're Elise's parents, right? Because when you achieve certain status, when you go from the out group to the in group, you are acknowledged. Like, whoa, that's Elise's dad. And I'm not the athlete, by the way. My wife's the athlete. So don't look at me like I'm some kind of athlete. The genes came from her side of the family, right? I wasn't an athlete. So tell me, how do we become, and this is for the group that I co-chair with Ann, we got different names for it, Tiger Team, Committee. How does Floris become more welcoming? Who wants to start? Go. Deliberate, intentional. But what is it? So think about that. But it has to be deliberate. It has to be intentional. And the first thing Ann and I, our committee, started to do was looked at the website. The website doesn't picture anybody that is any different from the in-group. The website only portrays a certain segment of the population. Again, what we would call the in-group. There are no people from the other segments or pieces or slices, depending on how you look at it. Everybody pictured, photographed, were in the in-group. Now, there's a problem if the photographer is from the in-group. Who are they focusing on? People from the in-group. I'm looking for attractive people like me, right? Oh, I don't want to have that picture. It could be intentional. I would argue it could be unintentional, and it could be subconscious, right? What else? We have to be deliberate, intentional. Bob?
I just had those words, deliberate, intentional, but I put it in a different context. So you make it a point to walk up to someone you don't know, regardless of the language.
Walk up. You don't know.
You walk up regardless of their language, regardless of their appearance, regardless of whether they're in group or out of the group, and have an open and honest conversation.
See, I think we do that. We greet well. Everybody's friendly, genuine, but do we keep them? Do we have that connection, that mentor, that buddy? Go. Empathy. Put yourself into the shoes of, this is the problem. If you grew up in a homogeneous stovepipe, who do you have empathy for? People like yourself. If you've never been exposed to people that are different, how do you empathize with somebody completely different? Right? 30% of the United States, 30% of the people in this country have passports. Only 30%. And they don't use them, right? The rest of us, including my wife's family, they never left their zip code. So imagine Mauricio Antonio Velasquez going to Lynchburg, Virginia, right? And Kelly's like, and please, don't be yourself when you meet my father. I'm like, what are you talking? He's old school. He's old school. I'm like, Kelly, come on. And when he comes at you, don't get rattled. I want him to like you. Now, what is the first question he asks me? Where are you from? Where are you from, boy? What do you know? He never asks what you do. And Kelly said, don't tell him that you're a diversity trainer. Right? Tell him you're a management consultant. So, where are you from, boy? And then his second question is, have you ever lived near, and he uses the N-word for African Americans. Have you ever lived near Enners, and have you ever dated Enners? When you think of Jews, homosexuals was a different term he used. And my favorite was Yankees. And I'm looking at Kelly each time going, Yankees? You mean the baseball? You know what I mean, boy? And Kelly comes over to me. Okay, it's going well. It's going well. And I look at Kelly. I go, going well? And she says, I warned you. I told you he was old school. Like, you didn't tell me he was a member of the Klan, right? And what bothered me was not Kelly's father's comments coming at me. What bothered me was Kelly watching and saying nothing. And she goes, I don't understand. I said, honey, when my parents disrespected you last week, what did I do? Oh, well, you torched the place, you burned them to the ground. How'd you feel? Oh, I said, your dad makes my parents look like kindergartners. And you watched. And she says, I wanted to say something. I didn't know how. Now, that's an issue of competence. I'm going to show you some techniques here in a second. She says, I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how. I said, that's different. But from my vantage point, you said nothing the whole time. She was watching like it was a tennis match. And she told me I couldn't respond, so I was gagged and handcuffed, and I'm waiting for her to say something. I was like, this is madness. Did I feel welcome that first night? No, I felt tested. At Kelly's house, in my house, Kelly is in the out group where I grew up. Dominant is Latino Hispanic culture. But in her house, I'm the out group, right? It changes. What else? Go.
Two ideas. One, joint events with congregations that may be very theologically different from this congregation. So left, right. So like not just a one-timer, but an ongoing joint event with theologically and demographically different.
Theologically and demographic. Tell me who in this room remembers this. The mosque that was attacked. Raise your hand if you remember the mosque that was attacked a couple years ago. One of my employees, Bushra, was a member of that mosque, and it had been attacked and defiled. And Tom put out an email saying, an attack on one church is an attack on all churches. Let's go and rally and support them. And I was so fired up. It was a good turnout. It wasn't a big turnout. Right? And by the way, if you remember in the old church, we had a little house on one side of the property. That house was actually the Muslim, Bushra's Ahmadi Muslim. It was her church's first house of worship. We lent them the house so they could worship there. And we used to do programs with the Ahmadis. Go.
So, and then the second, and that's a good example. So the second is, it's one thing to be welcoming, but I think if people see that the church is actually visibly supporting public policies that make that welcoming spirit known and public, like literally public policy, whether it's
Or outreach. We're not just outreaching to people like us, but we're outreaching to people that are different.
But I mean specifically, like when there was a proposed Muslim ban, that's an attack on religious liberty.
Yes.
Actually going on record against that. Or
Yes.
family separation policy, or supporting the Equality Act with regard to
On record, publicly. Yep.
issues or criminal justice.
Excellent. Make sure you put that in a Post-it. I'm capturing some now, but I want Post-its for our committee. What else could we be doing to be more welcoming? What's the boundary? Go.
The opportunity. A church we used to attend, we had a breakfast opportunity between services,
Food between services.
so that we could get a chance to sit. You could even upscale it with some questions to ask or a thought for the day to talk about.
Thought for a day.
So that if somebody's just walking in the door, you have a chance to have that conversation.
So someone on our committee said we do that, but then when I went there to that event, everybody was sitting in their different camps. So how do we bust the table? It's almost like there are name tents. All the blanks will sit here. All the blanks will sit here.
Have a group that is intentionally sitting at different tables.
So intentionality. Or we need ambassadors who, hey, let's go, you, me, let's go, and we're going to sit here, and people are going to make faces, and let's do it, right? I was always that person. I'm not playing it safe. Let's go sit over here. Let's go find out what's going on here. I was always bored by people like myself. I was always fascinated by people that were different. I mean, a true curiosity. What else? Trained ambassadors. Sure. Trained ambassadors. The greeters do a great job. It's the ambassador that will take them and drive them all the way home, right? What else?
For the website,
Yeah, website needs work.
the website needs to be in multiple languages.
Uh-huh.
So right now it's in English and we have a Hispanic ministry.
I know.
When I talk to people that are Hispanic, I don't speak Spanish very well. I use Google Translate.
Right. You use a translate, which isn't great. It works. Sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, but we don't have it perfect. Any other ideas? Go.
I was gonna say, in order to, what I found with Latino group being white is that they need someone to make a move. Like if they're scared to talk
Initiate.
English,
Yes.
and then a lot of people who don't speak Spanish are afraid to try, you know? So it's almost like if there was a language opportunity to say, hey, how can we talk with one another? Because a lot of people are just not good at speaking other languages, but they want to try.
Yeah. And we don't laugh. And don't laugh at each other when we try.
Yeah, it's
Right.
on both sides. I mean, just because someone moves to this country doesn't mean they automatically have English learning skills. And so-
Right.
And just because somebody is English doesn't mean they have automatic learning other language skills. And so that doesn't mean they don't want to try.
Go.
What about a cultural exchange small group?
So a Bible study targeting, I love it. So hold on. Now, see, I'm going to need to get over here. A cultural exchange Bible, or what'd you say? I'm sorry.
I had the opportunity
Oh,
spent time teaching each other about our cultures, learning idioms that all cultures had. And everybody had, there's another fish in the sea, but some of them had, you know, and said there's another camel in the desert. I mean, they each had their own, but to find out that we all had that same phrase was very connecting.
symbols, stories. Yes, I love it.
A year learning about each other's culture. They would show about their country, and the women from Pakistan showed beautiful photos of why they love their country, not the ones you see on the news. And it was incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
And we did an event where they had everybody bring a scarf and show us how you wear it. So the women from Canada tied it like this, and the women from Italy tied the brown chest or bikini, and the women from Indonesia talked about how they always wore it because when they go into the temple, and the woman from Yemen turned it into a burqa in 3 seconds.
All right, can you put that in a post-it? I want that. All right, somebody else. What are we going to do? Yes, sir.
I'm really pleased and really surprised. This is what I was expecting, but I really like what you're doing. To me, what I see in this is essentially the focus that you don't want to focus as groups indiscriminately. You want to focus as an individual.
Person.
Your center there, you can't change that, so you shouldn't make assumptions about that.
That's right.
That's it. Then you go out to the outside, and what I'm hearing is we'll accept it. You'll have a lot of different differences. I still think the point is you want to be looking at the person as an individual.
That's right.
But the one thing that I'm not hearing and I think is important is diversity for the sake of just diversity isn't necessarily good. You have to have, I think the whole point of the church, the purpose of our church is to have a moral plumb line. They pull the plumb
Be
line.
one with God. Worship together. Share.
So when we individually share with people, that's one thing that I think needs to stay part of the
Yeah.
focus. Just for diversity's sake is not.
Diversity for diversity's sake is not going to work. Diversity for the sake of inclusion. Look, we have to create a safe place, a safe church, which means you can make mistakes. You can slip on the banana peel. But it doesn't mean we can. See, it wasn't in the Bible study, the bashing of the Catholics and the Democrats. It was that no one else was offended. No one else in the room. They might have been uncomfortable, but no one else said, whoa, wait a second. What's going on here? No, they were all into it. You know, it's called piling on, by the way. They'd make a comment, then somebody else would make a comment. And I'm sitting there just watching this going, this is not going the way I want to go. Go.
So I would take issue with what you said about diversity for diversity's sake. It's not that it's bad, it's not necessarily a good thing. I think it's we don't, and so if you're not looking for that, you don't know what experiences you're not having. Does that make sense?
Well, it's the journey versus the destination. It's the light at the end of the tunnel. Diversity for diversity's sake. A lot of companies are trying to do that. Hire veterans, hire disabled, hire GLBTQ. But then they go, once the people get there, they're like, they don't feel welcome. They have to hide themselves before they walk in. There's a sacrifice. Inclusion is the answer. How do we make everyone feel welcome? Well, I'm not comfortable with blanks being here. Well, maybe you need to go. Go.
I was just thinking, when you first asked about diversity, I was thinking about my garden I was working on, and my bee balm is taking over, and half the garden is now all bee balm. It's all the same.
Bee balm. What's that?
I don't know, it's
A weed. Oh, okay.
flower, but
It's a flower. Okay.
I was thinking what I was doing was pulling it out because I want different heights, different textures,
Yes.
different colors, different scents, different bloom
Yeah.
times. And what I was thinking was I was appreciating the diversity of
Yes.
the garden and getting, so maybe it's just learning to appreciate
Yes. Value.
different things that each different person brings to the
Yeah.
table.
How do we value? Look, when Tom said, I want you to be a lay leader because you were raised a Catholic and not a Methodist, what was he saying? I value your perspective. Not, ew, yuck, what are you doing here?
But maybe teaching people by showing them something like a garden. Which one do you like, this or this?
Showing. Yeah, showing. We have to be intentional.
I think one of the biggest hurdles is something that it's the fear. It's being uncomfortable, right? So
Yes.
people understand it's okay.
How to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
So my older sister is profoundly handicapped, and when you go into a group where they are that severely handicapped, everybody, they freeze up. And
Right.
you have to learn to be uncomfortable, and then you start to see beyond the fear of, oh my gosh, and then you start to notice, hey, the guy with cerebral palsy is actually communicating with me in his way. And
That's
if
right.
I don't pay attention, he's moving his chair to tell me.
And you see them light up like a Christmas tree.
Oh, he was smiling.
Right.
Someone finally understood what he was saying.
Yep, go.
You want to know a person who's different than you,
Yep.
and share the story. Storytelling really breaks a lot of walls. Find out their story. Find
Yes.
out who they are, how they got here, and what they feel. Opportunity to do that breaks a lot of
And we got to put those stories on the web, on the website, and we have to create the events where people are coming to share. I want to hear from people who haven't. I mean, I'm not going to exclude, but my job as a facilitator. Go.
I'm going to speak a little bit as an outsider, because I'm Jewish.
All right.
And so, I live very close to the church, and so I pass by the church all the time. What the church has done well is I know what's going on in the church just simply from the sign that's in front.
Okay.
And what attracted to me was what got me coming here was the interfaith sermon series that Tom did years ago. So what I think what might be relevant is also to have what do we suppose the church stands for? And so when Tom speaks and he has a theme, that theme can be attractive to certain elements because it speaks not necessarily to my religious beliefs, but to my values.
So repeat that. Repeat that, because I'm capturing all your other comments. We do well. This is a do well. We do well around signage, around communication. What attracted you was the interfaith sermon series.
Yeah.
The last piece is the connection. What?
Well, because I was able to then it
Drew me in.
that the values of the church were in line with my own values. So basically, the series brought me in, and I got an idea of what was going on.
And we're seeing that, right?
Even though the premise of the religion is different from mine, my views, the values are in line.
Okay.
That's what brought me in.
But you've seen the messaging and the signage is changing a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
And bringing me in because I knew what this church was about because the signs are very effective.
Anything that's turned you off.
Anything that turned me
Yeah. Anything. So look, another way of looking at this is change management 101. Present state and what we call future state, and then there are obstacles.
I just think it was important that it's to show something you're doing well, and then build on it.
Yeah.
Not every sign that I see works for me, but
Right.
have a series like that.
Another. Okay. A series. Okay. And it was a series because it was inclusive.
Right. It was an inclusive.
There's all religions.
Right.
Yeah. You know. So my mom finds out that I'm having Ethan baptized here. And my mom blows the gasket. What are you talking about? You should be baptized in the Catholic Church. I said, Mom, you got to come and check this out. And she sat right here with me. She's crying during the service. I said, what's going on? She said, it's the most beautiful thing. See, in the Catholic Church, you're baptized on a Saturday. It's usually rainy and dark out, just like this. And it's just you and your family. That's just my memories of my 3 siblings. It was always kind of, like going to the dentist, But when Tom raises Ethan up, and Ethan, by the way, was born with a full head of hair, so he had like Don King, and Kelly's mother had given him this baptismal linen gown and the initials of all the grandchildren. It's just spectacular. And he raises him up almost like Lion King, and the whole, he's walking around, help me raise this child. And I look at my mom, why was she crying? She's like, I had no idea. I said, until you come, you don't know. So to your point, you got to break bed. We need activities and events where we really create safety and become genuine, authentic. And we got to, the problem is, can I teach people to be comfortable being uncomfortable? That's tough. Can I teach empathy? You can't teach empathy. You have to want, you got to desire, you want to care for others. It's tough to teach empathy, right? Now, what you can do as a parent is make sure your children have empathetic journeys. Like I made Ethan, and I'll make my 2 daughters as well, work in a restaurant. And he's working at Cracker Barrel. And the other day he comes home. He worked all summer, and he decided to work on his senior year. He's still working at Cracker Barrel, a dishwasher busboy. And just today, he's covered in schmutz. He stinks. And I looked at him, I said, how you doing? He goes, I'm exhausted, my feet hurt, my back hurt, but I love my job. I said, okay. And I think I now know why, Dad, you wanted me to work in a restaurant. I said, well, why do you think I wanted you? I've seen what happens when people have limited opportunities, limited means. And I looked at him and said, That's exactly, no, I had no idea. You know, I started in a restaurant at the bottom and I moved my way up. And you interact with people and you experience. I really want him to feel what happens when you stand up all day and work all day. You know how many parents here don't want their kids to work until after they come back from college? I'm like, that's crazy. Who here was working before they were 15 years old, right? Right? I mean, it's like, get in the game, man, right? No. I have family members on one side of the family. Oh, no. When they come back from college, they're not going to be ready. They got to be working how many? I was working 2 and 3 jobs every summer, right? Come on, right? But that's the journey from the out group to the in group, right? You got to see it all. What else could we be doing? I want you to put it in a post-it if you don't say it out loud and give it to me.
So that's it. I do think that there is a large portion of our congregation that is needing to, again, be given permission to take risks and feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
But also, they really don't realize that there is an in-group and that there is this awareness
They're in a cocoon.
of their privilege.
Right. Yep. Bob and I did it together, the guest house, where all these homeless folks come. What a spectacular way to see, wow, how blessed we are, right? And there was a guy on our bus, and he had left his bag in the bus, and I went back to get it for him, and he looked at me like, you want to help me? I'm like, sure, man, I'll go get your... And he smelled god-awful. His bag smelled god-awful. And when I brought it in, people were like, oh. I said, no, it's okay. You know, he'll get cleaned up. We'll get cleaned up. But I was okay with the discomfort. Oh, no. Ew, no. Somebody else. I mean, what are you doing working in a guest house if you don't want to get dirty? Right? I mean, you don't go there, well, I hope I don't break my nail. I mean, it's like, come on, get in the game, right? But how do we get people who don't understand the cocoon they're in? Maybe they don't want us to, you know, how many of us don't care? How many of us, oh, no. I'm going to move to a gated community where everybody is the same, right? I don't want to be mixed. Oh, and they are moving in. My own neighbor says, Mauricio, the neighborhood is changing. Our property values are going to go down. And I looked at him, his name, Tahir. He's Muslim, and he's Afghani. I said, Tahir, you're that person that everybody was worried about when you moved in. I'm that person. And he looked at me and goes, oh, yeah, right. I said, did you forget? I mean, there's only one thing worse than hate. It's hate dipped in hypocrisy, right? I was like, Tahir, man, we got to put up a fence. We got to gate this community. I said, to keep you out, you already live here. You know, this is a true story. I don't live that far. And there's a knock on the door, and I go to the door. And it's the captain of the Herndon Police Department. And he's handing out business cards. I said, how can I help you? He says, yeah, my name is da-da-da. And if you see any Hispanics cutting through your backyard, I want you to call us. I said, Hispanics. Well, you know, there's that kind of day labor site right off of Rock Hill, which is kind of behind our house. If there are any Hispanics, I said, hold on a second. Do I call you if my family's out back? If my parents are out back? He goes, what? And I gave him my card. I said, I think you need my card. And he's looking at my card. He's looking at his card. I said, you know what you're doing? He says, what? I said, you're pulling a Paul Revere. He says, what's a Paul Revere? The Hispanics are coming. The Hispanics are coming. Call me. But was he at the person level or was he at the group level? Right? I said, man, you're doing this whole community a disservice. Right? Now, call, what he should have said, if he focuses on the individual, right? Call me if you see somebody who you don't know. Suspicious. No, I only want calls if they're brown. Right? I was like, come on, man. Right? But we did have a nice civil conversation. It was almost funny. I almost laughed. We started laughing. That's the key, though, right? How do we create? So let's get to that. A Paul Revere. So I can. Where did he go? Let's go to the video. Can we go to the video? All right. Do I just hit play? All right. Watch the video and then we're going to discuss. It's going to tie the whole thing together. It's called The Lunch Tape. It's on YouTube. It's free. Black and white, set in New York City. It's called The Lunch Tape. I'll put it up. Watch this and then we'll discuss. It's fast.
no, no, no,
Let me give
don't.
you a hint.
Please don't touch it. I'll take care of those. No.
All right, let me give you a hint.
No,
huh?
don't.
You're
No,
awesome.
no, no. You're making me miss my train.
Conscious versus unconscious bias. Oh, we're all colorblind. None of us see race. I don't have a bias bone in my body. I hear it all. Amateur actors. This was his thesis to get his degree in film. They're shooting in the middle of Grand Central, New York City. Watch your body language here. She's going to look startled.
Lord have mercy.
He's not an actor.
How you doing? You know who it is, boy.
He's the real deal, walking through the scene. See how she's trying not to laugh?
I know who you are, hot dog. You know I know
He's
who
not an
you is.
actor.
How
He's
you
better
doing?
than De Niro.
Happy New Year. May God bless you.
He won an Academy Award because of that guy showed up. Oh no. What's happening? No. He has it loaded. It froze. I'm not touching anything. No, don't know what to do. Okay. Do I hit play again? Back it up. Oh, shoot. All right, here's what I'm gonna have you do. I want you to write this down, the lunch date. Write it down. The lunch date. Adam Davidson, it's on YouTube. I'm not gonna ruin it. The lunch date, Adam Davidson. It's on YouTube. If you can't find it on YouTube, ask your children or your grandchildren to find it, and then you can play it. Okay? It will show you something about yourself. I promise you. It's enlightening. Now, in my materials, I was going to give you a self-assessment, but your conversation has been so great. But understand, if you ask for my PowerPoint, everybody has my Post-it. Get my PowerPoint, I'll send it to you. Ask for it, I'll send it to you. There's a self-assessment on here. I truly believe before you can understand others, you must understand yourself first. You read the statement, you rate yourself, then you total your score. So this is behavioral. And really answer it how you believe you truly behave, not how you think you should believe. So when you do this instrument, all right, you read these statements, you rate yourself, and then you total your score. Your score is going to tell you something about yourself. Now, nobody in this room can score in the naive category after spending an hour and a half with me. Can you say I had no idea? Those are naive folks. Perpetuators are my bread and butter. These are the haters, the sexists, the racists that go back to your countries, the I hate blanks. They're what we call perpetuators. Avoiders are the people always around the perpetuator who say and do nothing. We also call them enablers or colluders. We want you, this church is very interested in fighters and change agents, the fighters who stand up for social justice, the change agents who's always working behind the scenes. So we want you to embrace, to be comfortable being uncomfortable, to make people feel welcome, to walk them in, introduce them to people, anchor them, as one of my churches, embed people in the culture of the church. Embed, like they can't leave, they got to come. Embedding is the key. So, I don't have the time. I got to get to these techniques. What's a change agent? Another time. I'm going to get to these techniques. So there's two kinds of behaviors. There's the behaviors that are welcoming, and then there are the behaviors that are exclusive, all right? And what we want to do is encourage welcoming behavior, like, yes, absolutely right on, wonderful of you to go and embrace and say hello and welcome that person, even though they look totally different from you. You're praising, you're reinforcing. But then there are the behaviors, what we call the nevers in my work, that when somebody exhibits that behavior, we got to say something, right? And I'm a fan of, whoops, where is it? I had a slide for the nevers. Hold on. No. No, but I have the reaction. All right, I got to get to the technique. Oh, there it is. I'm a big fan of the ouch. Somebody says something disrespectful, inappropriate, hateful, and they may not even know they're saying something hateful, right? Some of us are intentional. Some of us, it kind of just comes out. I'm a big fan of ouch or really. How many of you had a child who, when he started to smell, didn't want to take a shower every day? Who knows what I'm talking about? And I'd say to my son, Ethan, you got to hit the showers, man. Really, Dad? I got to take a shower every day. I'm like, Ethan, come on now. That was a technique, but let's get to the advanced stuff. I'm a fan of the wow, the ouch, really. When somebody is saying something that's contra the mission of this church to somebody, or talking about somebody, right? It's the gossip, it's the hearsay. And you go, whoa, that person should feel welcome here. So how do you do that? Here's the technique. You don't attack the person, you separate the person from the behavior. If you attack the person, they get defensive. We call this love the person, hate the sin, but many of us don't know how to do that. Let me show you how it's done. You start in with a positive. So I'm talking to a parishioner that's bad-mouthing Republicans. Fred, you and I go way back. Please stop bad-mouthing Republicans. Please start being mindful that they're good people that we want welcome in this church. And just because you think all Republicans are bad, I feel like you're not looking at people one person at a time. Same thing can be said for Democrats. Stop bashing Democrats. Stop bashing Muslims, or whatever the comment that kind of piques your interest. You don't attack the person, you attack the behavior. Start being more mindful that this church is trying to be more welcoming. Start being on the side of the folks here that want to welcome more people to this church. Right? Whenever you hear somebody go, I don't know if that person's Floris material. What does that mean? I don't think they're a right fit. What does that mean? Stop talking about fit. Start being open-minded. You understand that we're in this together. So, I got to give you an example that's closer to home. Stop telling me that Elise is going to a dance with a black kid. Start telling me his name. Well, I don't know his name. So then we shouldn't be talking about him. Right? Start finding out what the kid's name is, right? So starts a very direct technique. Mom, stop rolling your eyes when Kelly my mom doesn't like my wife. Please stop rolling your eyes when Kelly talks. Stop making a face when Kelly walks in the room. Stop leaving the room when Kelly walks in the room. You're in her house and she's cooking you a meal tonight. Start being mindful of your body. And I'm only telling you this because I love you with all my heart. You got to start and end with a positive. Mamacita, con todo mi corazón, with all my heart, I love you. Right? It's called a feedback sandwich. Stop telling me I don't like the changes happening here at the church. But what do you mean by that? You know. You know what that phrase means? You know. You know what's happening here. No. What are you talking about? When you say you know, when you say those people, when you say them, I feel you're not being specific, or I feel you're generalizing. I'd prefer that you give me the name. Oh, I don't know their names. Then why are we talking about them? What does it take for gossip? One to give and one to receive. Right? Tom said this in church once. He says, I love it when we go, we got to pray for Ethan and Elise. Okay, what's happening? What happened? You want to know? And let me tell you, whoa, right there, he goes, we're going too far. Some matters should be private. Some matters should be, right? But don't spread gossip, because gossip's usually not positive, right? Didn't you hear? Do you see the craning of the neck? That right there is, we're crossing, we're going into uncharted territory. Right? You didn't hear? Too much gossip, right? Too much backstabbing, too much hearsay. So I'd prefer we stay focused on what's important, right? When you embrace everyone, I feel proud to be an ambassador with you. When you only embrace people that look and walk and talk like you, I feel like you don't understand the role of an ambassador. I prefer you embrace everyone, right? Stop telling me who you like. Start telling me we should like everybody. Could you understand we're in this? So I don't have time to dive into it, but I wanted to give you the techniques because I think they're powerful. All right? They actually come from spousal abuse, marriage counseling, drug and alcohol abuse. I do not think you should wait to that stage of your life to use these techniques, okay? And I'll give you the last example, and we break because we're at 8. People ask me all the time, do these techniques work? Best example I can give you. Kelly's dad calls. I'm in the room. Her mom's in the room. Her sister's in the room. And whatever he told Kelly, she starts crying. So I come into the kitchen. I'm like, what's going on? I was actually in the den watching the news. And she goes, oh, it's my father. So what's going on? Why are you crying? He said he spent all the money for the wedding. I'm like, we're 3 days out. What was he trying to do? Kill the wedding. So I said, all right, I'll pay for it. And I whispered in Kelly's ear because I was in debt. And she doesn't tell her mom and her sister that I'm $35,000 in debt on credit cards. I said, 5 credit cards, I got 7 on each. What's another 15 grand? I'll just spread it, right? But I said to her, what did you say to your dad? And she says, well, I didn't say anything. I just started crying. I said, Kelly Elizabeth, in front of her mom and her sister, who's an attorney. Her mom was a high school educated single mom that raised her and her sister, put them through college and grad school. Kelly goes, give me the phone. And she calls her father back and she says, Daddy, it's me. It's Kella. Listen, you know I love you. You're my father. Start with a positive. When you didn't come to my graduation, when you didn't come to my field hockey games, when you didn't come to my proms or my dances, I felt like you've never been there for me. I prefer for once that you be the father I've never had and honor a commitment, fulfill a promise. And she hangs up the phone, and I look at Kelly, I go, no, that's what I'm talking about. And I hug her, and her sister's like, what was that? And her mother like, what was that? And Kelly says, I've been wanting to say that for 20 years. Now, how does she feel the minute she uses the technique? Like $1 billion. Right? Now, at the reception, long story short, I was going to cut him out of the wedding since I'm paying for the wedding. But Kelly said, no, you're bigger than me. So at the reception, he comes up to me and he says, I got a check for you. I'm sorry, we're finishing in 90 seconds. I have a check for you. And he gives me a check for $15,000. And I look at him. I even said this to him, is it going to bounce? Boink. And he goes, oh, it'll clear. And I go to my bride, and Kelly's working, talking to people at a table, work in the room. And I say, hey, honey, you got a second? I'll put it on the table. She thought it was just a regular. I said, come here for a second. Look at this check. And she looks at me. And she starts crying uncontrollably. Why? He came through. He delivered. Ladies and gentlemen, this technique saved me $15,000. So when people say, does it work? You got to use it. You got to use a technique. You got to give feedback. You got to praise when you see God working in wonderful ways. And you got to hold people accountable when they're like, hey, now, that's not the way we operate here.
So what strikes me is she was really seen by her father almost for the first time.
Oh, let me be very clear. He had the money the whole time. He wasn't going to give it to her. I don't have the money. And then he does 3 days later. It's a bluff. She called his bluff. But there's 2 pieces to this technique. One is you speak your mind and you feel. How many of you, let me flip it. Kelly's one of those people who doesn't say something and then she's angry at herself for days later. This technique allows you to vent, right, praise or give constructive feedback. And you leave, the technique works. She felt great saying it. Her mom and her sister were like, oh my goodness. I'm so proud of you. But it really worked when he gives us a check for 15 grand 3 days later, right? So to your point, it's multidimensional. But people say to me all the time, I want to say something, I just don't know how. Now, if you can't say ouch, to me, this is the most simplest technique. Really, look, ladies and gentlemen, let's put it in perspective. What's happening in this country right now? 15, 20 years from now, we'll all be judged. Where were you? Did you stand up? Did you say something? Or did you stay on the sidelines? Because if you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And in this church, Tom says we have to be more intentional, which means you got to stand up and go, come on now. We have to welcome everybody here, not just people that look like you. Come on now. We got to embrace. We have to, it's love, really, right? The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is the absence of empathy. If we can't empathize with people that are different, which I think is truly, making us all disciples of Jesus Christ. I think that's what he did, right? And I'm nowhere near an expert in the Bible, but, the way he embraced lepers and the way he embraced the poor and the way he embraced Samaritans and prostitutes. I mean, why don't Christians get that? I don't understand how they don't get that. He was inclusive. He was welcoming. He's like, no, let them in. No. She can touch my feet. I mean, it's just story after story. And it just kills me how some people twist it to hide their hate. The Klan, I'll end with this comment. The Klan burn a cross in your front yard because they think they're Christian warriors. Think about that. They think, by the way, if you go to the Ku Klux Klan website, now they're called United Klans of America, they have biblical scripture. You can buy a kit with a bib and a book for your kindergartner, so they start hating at a very young age. They're very, very savvy. It's a small dose of hate over long periods of time. And the last thing I'll say to you, my son was on gaming, and I heard him on a headset. I was getting a beer out of the fridge, and there's a kid playing with him, and he's using the N-word. And my son goes, you know what, I'm playing Fortnite. I'm not here to listen to your horrible language, and hangs up. And I said to Ethan, what's going on there? Oh, Dad, they're just people recruiting online. The haters play games with total strangers online, and then they use the N-word and Jews and all this horrible to see how you react. And then if you start saying the same, we got one, join us, brother. But if you go, hold on a second, that's not the way I operate. This is not why I play this game. I don't know who you are, but I'm out, right? And they'll never, it's random, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we got to open our eyes. It's that simple. So I end by saying thank you. If you enjoyed this, please tell everybody. If you didn't like it, come tell me, okay? I'm out. Thanks for your time. Bless you. I'm out. If you want the PowerPoint, email me. Everybody has my email on that Post-it. Keep it, and I'll send you the whole thing, all right? I just didn't have enough time to dive in all the way. It's tough. Yeah, we'll send it out. All right, thank you. Thank you.